Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Beer Enthusiasts. This is episode 23. We've got Big Sky Moose Drool. We realized we hadn't really done a brown ale of any kind. No, not like English brown, not American brown, not even kind of like the brown ales of Germany, like Dunkel or anything. So we're gonna kind of, as you'll see over the next couple weeks, we're gonna kind of fix that problem.
Absolutely. We're always bragging about how these kind of like amber to brown beers are both delicious and lend a lot of fun study and food pairing stuff. And it's like, so how have we not done brown ale yet?
Yeah,
So here we are.
Exactly, exactly. I went to Big Sky. They're out of Montana. Went to their website. They've got a few interesting things that I think are going to give us a good discussion around brown ale in general, because we definitely have some opinions after doing lots and lots of blind tasting with brown ale. But it comes in at 5% ABV. That seems to be pretty stock from year to year. One of the rare times where a brewery shares the SRM, they actually say this is 38 SRM, which from kind of like what you learn in BJCP and things like that, this is not what I would imagine 38 to be. This is, how would you, I mean, I know we're getting into the sensory, but I think it's proper here. I mean, this is kind of like deep brown.
Yeah, this
Like
is,
it's
and
got a little,
my lighting is not like the world's best lighting, and it's still a lighter brown than what I think 38 would be.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. If I had to guess, I would think this would be like, based on kind of what you learn about the SRM scale, like 28, 30.
yeah, yeah.
Like really dark brown. But I don't know. That's an interesting thing. There might be something we're missing there. But the other thing they talk about is they use 4 different kinds of malts. And that would likely probably just be some sort of specialty malts, along with, I would guess, some sort of pale malt for base malt, and then some sort of either darker malts for maybe some for color, maybe some for either body, flavor, residual sugar. You're looking at maybe some sort of and amber to brown to maybe lighter chocolate malts or something like that. But then for something that is in the BJCP as an American brown ale, the first hop they list is East Kent Golding, which it's like, okay. And I'm sure I'll look back at the BJCP, but I'm sure there's, you can use whatever, I'm sure there's some liberty with how much hops you can use. Speaking of that, Liberty is the next hop that they mention. And then the other one is Willamette, which those two are the most sort of noble of American hops that, I mean, Willamette literally is. I mean, that's like literally meant to be like an American sort of noble hop. And when you look up just kind of like the most general terms of what Liberty could, what the flavor profile could be, it's that floral, or what, a lot of places will say is, spicy, which, not spicy like capsaicin, but could be something that's kind of peppery, or something that's maybe reminds you of some other, sort of spice, sort of that sort of spicy in that way, but nothing in terms of pine resin or tropical or dank or grapefruit or orange or nothing like that. Just a ton of that. If anything, the most American potential orange or like fruity characteristics you could get would be from the English hop that is listed first. So
Right. Yeah, that's been the interesting thing studying for Cicerone exams is, and BJCP is not meant to be to literally define each style. It's kind of
yeah,
rough guidelines. So certainly there's overlap between British and American style brown ales.
right.
But it's much easier if the brown ale has a very pungent American hop character to it to kind of tease out which version that it might be. So,
Yep.
we'll probably find some overlap here as we dig in, but that's to be
Yeah.
expected.
And then the other thing that was interesting too that they have on the website is that this has 28 IBUs, which is less than Sam Smith Nut Brown, which is a British brown ale.
Yeah,
So, uh,
and
and I'm
and
guessing
also
the malt profile is going to be pretty darn similar. British pale malt, for Sam Smith Nut Brown, some sort of some sort of crystal, some sort of brown malt, some sort of amber malt or chocolate malt or whatever. So it's not like, there's going to be it's not like the grist is going to, make that sort of not really matter all that much.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
and we're talking, this one's listed at 5% ABV, which is also what Sam Smith Nut Brown is listed at, if I'm not mistaken. And so, it's the crossover hit of the century, American and
yeah,
British brown ale. Let's just see.
yeah. Really in our realm, what we're hoping is that if we get an American brown ale on the style panel on the master exam and we put British brown, like, we just want a lot of partial credit. That's all. That's all we really
just
want out
want
of
a
it.
couple of points, okay?
Yeah,
just a few points for getting
don't
close.
don't just dust us, yeah, and just say whose side are you on. So, all right, let's and then for other things, just for this style in general, ale yeast, single infusion mash. Nothing super special about the about fermentation. Could have some dry hop character, per BJCP guidelines. Only not necessarily saying that any of the brown ales are dry hopped by any means. I don't really think they are. It's probably more late hop additions in the boil than anything. But let's get to sensory here. We kind of talked color. It's very, very clear. That's quite obvious.
Yep.
The foam cap was actually really nice. That when that poured, that had a nice. It's got a nice little khaki tan kind of foam cap, really tight bubble structure. I mean, the appearance is really great. It's spot
sticking
on
around too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the aroma is, kind of like bread crust jumps out to me immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But, just kind of like getting 2 or 3 malt notes at first. It's that bread crust, a little dusting of cocoa, kind of like a baker's cocoa.
Yeah, you get that too.
It smells pretty clean fermentation, like I think I can kind of tell that there's, ale-like fermentation, but it's not like this big estery beer, maybe just kind of like a light fruity character underneath all that malt.
Yeah, there's a touch of kind of like a cedar wood or tree bark kind of woodsiness, probably from one of these one of these particular hops.
Yeah, and a little nutty. Yeah, I don't know if you want to call it almond or what, but it's it not huge nuttiness, just a little bit.
Yeah, almond's pretty good. If you went like roasted peanut, I think I'd be down with that too. Follows through pretty well on the palate in terms of echoing the flavor. Palate doesn't really change my perception of a whole lot of things. It's not because it's not overtly roasty or bitter on the palate. It's not sort of changing your perception of, you can kind of like in a lot of, I think this happens a lot for folks in, in sour beer, you can get a lot of like maybe more like kind of like candied notes or things like that, or jammy notes on the nose. And then once you kind of bring in the acidity, it kind of makes it seem like real fruit again. So it kind of, I do this a lot with my students where it's like, okay, maybe you're getting the same, base note, but what about it? Maybe the condition of the fruit or the condition of whatever it was that you were smelling. What are maybe some of the basic tastes that are getting involved in the flavor on the palate? How is that changing your perception? But this kind of rings true on both ends.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And there's also the one thing that I wasn't really getting an aroma of, but that is a malt flavor that's peeking out, is caramel. There's kind of like a little bit of a caramel malt sweet center, even though the beer does not finish sweet, I would say. And so that's kind of a cool addition. It kind of like, it's not just bread crust or toast or light cocoa. There's a little bit of a caramel ribbon in the middle for me.
Yeah, and I would say it's kind of like because I was kind of trying to figure out how do you describe like a caramel that's not, again, like in this kind of profile, it's not overly sweet. It's got a little bit of bitterness to it. So it's really, I mean, to me, it's just really like a Maillard-driven caramel impression rather than like literally like putting sugar in a pan, and then adding butter, at the end or whatever. Like this is like just like true Maillard reaction developed in the kiln, like by the maltster. Giving you that kind of flavor, but again, not giving some sort of overt sweetness to it like you would with actual, making of literal caramel itself, which is
Yeah,
fascinating.
that's a really important distinction, right? Because there's caramelization has a range of characters and flavors. So you don't have to literally mean caramel drizzle or whatever. It's like
Yeah,
you can caramelize onions, you can caramelize meat, you can make caramel. All those things involve caramelization.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then kind of going into the finish. Um, Relatively dry, not too medium bodied on like the lower end of medium, um, for me.
Yeah, this is in kind of adjusting the body expectation for brown ale too. I think this is on
Mm,
the lower side for brown ale. So it's
I
yeah,
would agree.
medium low. If you're comparing this to, this one's only 5% and it finishes pretty dry. There's a hint of hop character, kind of like reining everything in. Um, but it is, even 5.5 to 6% ABV brown ales drink a little bit bigger than this in the body, I think. And so, yeah, I think medium light is kind of a good spot to put it, especially in the context of brown ale.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, again, the kind of things that you would be thinking that would give, I'm just trying to think like if somebody just came to us and just said, I'm really struggling with British brown ale versus American brown ale, like what, advanced cicerones, what do I do? And I would just say, hope they serve you Sam Smith Nut Brown, and you can get some of that Esther character, and you can move along on
Yeah,
your way. But it's just when you taste things like Ale Smith Nut Brown, and you look at the hop character in that, and Cigar City Maduro Brown Ale, that some of these ones that seem to have switched. Cigar City Maduro was one of those that in the last BJCP switch was an American brown ale, but now has switched over to English. And when you look at the recipe, you're kind of like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense. But we're also, I think, really frustrated by the fact that there's just seems to still be, clean, fermenting, Chico or American ale yeast, type stuff. Whereas with Sam Smith Nut Brown, it's this expressive. They're using open fermentation, really encouraging ester formation, and so it's just it becomes more obvious, at least in the context of these two, be it whether it being American or British brown. But it's very difficult because you can get some of those nutty characters, you can get some of those caramel characters. Some of the hops that are being used are might not necessarily make you lean one way or the other. Because things like Sam Smith, they're going to be using traditional brown ales. I know we've kind of just thought like it, and then you get into Newcastle brown ale, and that's just like a really like a brown, like you've even said, is this just like a brown lager? Like it's just so
right. It's
clean,
just so clean
it's
for
and
a
approachable and drinkable,
supposedly
and
English beer, but
yeah,
yeah,
so
and
just
there's kind of two different considerations, right? If you're going up for any kind of exam or working on your just blind tasting, um, you really just sort of have to know some of the most common examples because you peel away at what's not there, right? So if you're drinking Moose Drool Brown Ale with us, you you're not really getting diacetyl. You're not really getting that big fruity English yeast style fermentation character. It's relatively clean in comparison, so you can kind of like rule out some of the more expressive English examples of brown
yeah,
ale. And then where it gets hard is comparing it to something like an Avery's Ellie's Brown Ale or Ale Smith Nut Brown or something like that, where they share a lot of characteristics and the differences are a little bit more minute. Um, and the fun version of that, of trying to figure out where this sits on the brown ale spectrum that we get to talk about soon, is food pairing. Because you think about, you know, this is true of every style. There are some beers that help kind of define what a style is, but there are a lot of commercial examples in that style. And for most styles, the character varies kind of wildly. And I think within American Brown Ale, which, um, Big Sky calls this the world's best American Brown Ale. Let's go with what the brewers are calling it. Um, this is on the light side of American hop character. This uses just sort of like less impactful American hops in it. It's on the lighter side of the ABV. It's on the lighter side of some of those malt flavors, like when we say chocolate, and coffee. We're not talking about espresso and a dark chocolate bar. It's just whispers of that. And
Yeah.
so I think that changes potentially what you want to pair it with depending on what's going on, because some people see dark beer and they think this can go with the biggest fattiest meats, and let's have the heaviest grilled food. And it's like, maybe you can find some synergy there, but this, we've pegged the body at medium light, on the light side of medium. And this beer could disappear if you don't match intensities very well.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I think that's a great thing that leads right into kind of what I was hoping we could do with food pairing, is some stuff that you're talking about, like what to maybe look for, what to avoid. Sounds like your cautionary tale is maybe giving this one a little too much credit in terms of intensity, and it's also maybe just not a style that can necessarily punch above its weight in a lot of cases, and you really have to meet it kind of where it's at. But I think you're looking for kind of some similar kind of mired character in your food. You're looking for caramel flavors. You're looking for chocolate flavors. I think in terms of what you're trying to draw out, maybe you're looking for something that's kind of in a little bit more of like a floral realm or a woodsy realm, or even maybe something in kind of like a more classic kind of fruit character that might kind of be in maybe more of a traditional brown ale, and kind of see if you can add that to the beer via the with the food being the vehicle. And then, like you kind of said, avoiding intensity mismatches and giving the beer a little too much credit for what it can kind of stand up to. And then maybe just I think with brown ale it's great, but it's also just because you're looking for a lot of those things. Those are in a lot of foods. I mean, the Maillard reaction is pretty is pretty prominent throughout lots of food. And so you got to find some good contrasts in there, because it's going to be pretty easy to get a lot of matching characteristics, especially if you're not kind of looking outside of American cuisine, where we're fairly driven by a lot of bread, and like
Yeah.
caramel character and that sort of stuff. So that's what I really tried to do. Kind of really tried to step out of American, kind of the traditional American cuisine and sandwiches um, and things of that nature. I wanted to start just, as everybody knows, we're started studying for the master exam. We just signed up, so I got to bring something that's cheese related. And there was a fenugreek Gouda that Janet Fletcher suggests in her beer and cheese book, which I actually thought sounded pretty good. She described it as having kind of this nutty like sweetness. And then Chris has been going through all the episodes and looking at all the pairings that we've been doing, and I'm sure he's come across the fact that I have mentioned fenugreek on more than one occasion. And she kind of talks to the same kind of character that I think comes from fenugreek, which she says it kind of brings a light maple syrup character to the
Mm.
Gouda. So you're kind of getting this like butter, caramel, nutty, maple. So there's a little bit there that's can really match up well, but then there's some other stuff that's going to add threads of complexity to the pairing. And obviously, when you're working with cheese, it's not going to be the easiest thing just to get, all the different, you're not just always going to have a bunch of contrasts and complements. Cheese is complex, but, not necessarily as complex as you could make a dish. Um,
Right.
but I think it's more interesting than just kind of I think this is a younger, maybe like a 3-month, 4-month Gouda, like really, really young. So I think it's not going to be too intense. And what you're bringing to the table too is something that it can play with, and I think that's kind of the key too. And this isn't going to be kind of overtly savory. It's not going to have any sort of age, these really intense age characteristics to it. So I think that's not going to make it too much of a intensity mismatch. But where did you land on um, uh, for savory?
Yeah, we're kind of having some parallel thoughts on this. And for me, it was also driven by a lesson that we learned very recently, which was we try to do tasting and sensory practice together at least once a week. And at the end, we'll bust out some cheeses and some extra beers and kind of taste some things. And most of the time, that's random, because we don't know what we're going to blind taste each other on. And so it's you don't need to pick particular cheeses or whatever. We just kind of just get what's on sale. But Scott had the amazing idea a couple of weeks ago to, we're always left at the end of the night with some of these kind of middle of the road beer styles, right? They're kind of regular strength beers. They're have more mild characters to them. It's not like we're sitting with 15 barley wines at the end of the night. And so why don't we get some mellower cheeses to see if we can find some really nice pairings with mellow cheeses? And we found out that that is much more difficult than we anticipated. um, we've got a lot more to research there, but you'd be surprised at how some cheeses that you just kind of have by themselves feel quite mellow can still run over a mellow beer a little bit. And what we found, you're not going to have a bad time doing that. We didn't find a lot of pairings that were bad, but we're studying for a big exam. We're looking for fireworks. We're not looking for merely good. And so that's a lesson I learned, that if I'm pegging this on the lower side of medium body, and it's kind of one of the brown ales that has less character, and I don't mean that in a bad way because this is good for its own situation, then a very common thing that people recommend is grilled cheese sandwich with brown ale, which is really nice for a lot of obvious reasons, right? That kind of like buttered toasted marks on the side. And then a lot of people pick, kind of like a medium to sharp cheddar for that kind of grilled cheese sandwich. But I think you need a bigger brown ale for that particular pairing. So I dialed it back a little bit, and I wanted to do a different kind of grilled cheese sandwich. I wanted to do a brie and apple kind of like toasted sandwich, which is kind of like a common way to bring levity to that kind of a toasted cheese sandwich. I want a brie that's not super old and funky. It's kind of like just a really nice and creamy, melty, the kind that you would oven bake for a party. Spread that on there. You get your like green apple slices to go on it as well. And I think what could really set it off too is a little bit of a honey Dijon mustard. And so we're leaning to the sweet side of that. You get those mustards that they have a little bit of mustard character, but it's not a nasally, horseradishy, spicy mustard. It's sweet and has some of those other darker mustard flavors. So yeah, brie, green apple, toasted sandwich with a little bit of honey Dijon. And I'm looking for a lot of the compliments that you already mentioned. Like you said, you can kind of veer toward compliment heavy territory when you're dealing with Maillard on Maillard or whatever. But we're talking more and more in these episodes about using some less intense or fresher cheeses for a canvas so that we can build flavor on that. And where we're missing some estery character, I think the apple's going to slot in there and kind of remind us a little bit more of British Brown in terms of the pairing. And the compliment you can't beat is just, toasted bread with toasted malts. Maybe too easy, but it's also too delicious.
Yeah, and that's why we just can't get. Yeah, that's why sometimes it's it's there's the temptation to kind of get tricky or to kind of try and get. But sometimes it's just the basics are just there because they work, or things become cliche because they're true. That's why they stand the test of time. I kind of went in kind of had almost like a similar path, kind of trying to think of like, the sort of how do you bring in the kind of like really lighter, kind of nuttier kind of cheeses. Thought about things, where am I going to get Maillard Browning from? Wanted to kind of bring in some savoriness. So the first thing I landed on was the kind of cheese area that I wanted to be in, and that was raclette. But I wanted to bring in a little bit more kind of savoriness rather than just kind of having like your traditional, boiled potato and then just kind of taking, the metal sheet, that you melt the raclette on and then just kind of pouring it over. But rather doing doing that over just like a big like portobello mushroom. Just have it kind of open faced so the raclette can just kind of fall into the mushroom. But then wondering also, because that's going to bring in some Maillard character. You just, you put a good sear of that on the pan. And get that nice and soft and browned, and you're going to get a little savory. You're going to get some of those Maillard character notes. But then kind of figuring out a way to maybe just add a little bit more salt potentially to the dish, because raclette's not a super salty cheese. While the mushroom is savory and you're going to season it, it's not a naturally overly salty um, plant. And also thought of a way maybe to bring in some fruitiness would just be like a light. I would want to play with this, be super careful because it's the potential where the intensity could get me now that we're talking about this. But just a really light either drizzle or even just like a light brushing, near the end of the cooking of the mushroom of just a little ponzu. Just get a little bit
Oh,
of that citrusy character in there, add a little bit of saltiness, but don't throw in. I think the hard part too is a lot of the times when I do stuff with ponzu, it's paired with soy sauce and oil, like it's kind of part of a trio or a group of different sauces that I'm looking to kind of build umami character with. But I think if it's just a little drizzle of of ponzu kind of near the end and just brushing it onto the portobello, just to maybe give it just that little kiss of citrus, and a little extra salt. Play with the salt levels. Maybe don't salt the mushroom as much during the cooking process. Let the ponzu do that near the end. But yeah, that's kind of what I landed on for savory.
well, and we've had, I don't know what the date on this beer is when it was packaged, but we've had what tastes to us like fresher moose drool that has
Yeah,
a little bit bigger of a hop character to it. And despite the hops that are in it being a little bit more like noble adjacent varieties, maybe that ponzu can draw a little bit of that citrus out too, just that kiss of orange from the Kent Goldings, a little bit of kind of lightly lemony character from underneath those Liberty hops, where those are
yeah,
somewhat
yeah,
spicy. They do have this like hard to grasp onto in low levels, very light fruitiness. So I like that
yeah.
together.
Maybe drawing out, especially from something like Willamette or Liberty, or even and maybe especially even two East Kent Goldings, kind of giving it like a almost like a fruited tea, like a
Hmm.
bergamot, like giving it like that kind of bergamot orange, from ponzu, and using the citrus from the ponzu and the kind of tea like character from noble hops. I like that. That's a good call out. I like that. Where did you land for dessert?
I want to do kind of a couple of small bites, and I think the way to accomplish that is a trio of macarons.
Mm,
So let's do, our just like super solid complement's going to be a chocolate one, French
yeah.
macaron chocolate. Macarons are, for those that don't know, they're the little kind of French sandwich cookie that's basically meringue and almond flour. And so almond flour is just kind of like a base complement to that nutty character that we're getting is nice. The best ones are not like absurdly sweet, right? They've got that kind of like fluffy meringue texture. They're a little mealy in the almond meal sense of it, not like
Hmm.
difficult to eat. And then so chocolate's our easy one, right? That's going to pair. That's just going to be a complement train. Um, then how about a white chocolate one? So get a little bit of that kind of paler, milkier type
Yeah, I like
chocolate
that.
character, and then the third one, mint, a mint macaron. And where we've been exploring mint some more, but I think mint is
Hmm.
going to hopefully do something similar to what we're trying to draw out of the hops in the other dishes, which is magnify that spicy character a little bit. Mint and chocolate, you've got two different kinds of chocolate macaron as well.
Oh
I
man.
think that all coming together is not going to be too sweet. It's three small macarons. That could be fun to kind of like take little bites of each and see where we can get some mint chocolate, some toasted almond, some almond croissant type flavors going without going too sweet. So I think that might be good.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I went down the breakfast for dessert
Ooh,
route,
I'm in.
and yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and I think you can go. I think you can just kind of go whatever's gonna let you put a little bit of maple syrup on it. I think you can go pancakes. I think you can go Belgian waffle. And honestly, I would want to try this. Just for the sake of intensity. We've cooked Chris and I and our buddy Anna Deep have cooked and tasted pancakes together that we've used Weiss beer to make. And I think that's just all the. I think that's the about as much intensity of a banana as I want. I actually not
Yeah.
even sure if I want an actual banana, because I'm also not really sure, because you're not really cooking the bananas for all that long when you're doing it in a pancake. So you still might get a little bit of like if you're, obviously you'd maybe want to use more ripe bananas, but making sure you're not getting any of sort of that tannic underripe banana character.
Mm-hmm.
You want more of the cooked character. Yeah, and then just a light drizzling of maple syrup. If you're ever worried about this in pairings, remember you don't have to submerge your pancake in maple syrup and then pair it with beer. You can just have a light a light drizzle, to kind of make sure that's because I'm just thinking that people are going to think it's too sweet, it's too sweet, but you
Yeah.
don't have to go wild with with that. And then you can play in that realm too. You can go flavored maple, flavored syrup. You can go blueberry or something.
Yep.
Kind of the
Yeah,
old
and
school
just a
old school
little pat of butter
IHOP
too.
flavors. Yeah. Yeah, you got to go butter. This style in British styles, diacetyl's a welcome sight for many people, welcome in the style. So, yeah, that's going to add another layer. It's going to add a little bit more of that impression of actual caramel. Like you're just kind of taking caramel that's just about to be done, and then you're just putting in that dab of butter to give it a little body and a little creaminess and a little sheen. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's a great way to go too. Yeah, a little pat of butter.
I like that. And the other thing that I would counsel, you said you don't have to drown your pancakes in butter. Something that I need to remind myself is I also don't have to make a triple stack of the world's most giant pancakes. Like
Yeah,
you could have three little coin pancakes or two with a
yeah,
little bit of maple syrup and enjoy
yeah.
your evening instead of keeling over in pain at how much sweet bread you ate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Amen to that. But
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 we're
also if
still
that's
learning.
I was gonna say, but also we know the temptation is real. So
We'll see.
well,
That sounds mighty delicious.
yeah, these are definitely some good pairings. Again, brown ales. Everybody knows how much we love the amber and brown spectrum for food pairing, and encourage people to brew more of these beers. I think one of the reasons that there might be just some of the kind of fluidity between the two styles is that there's just not a lot of folks who are really doing it and trying to do it well, and so it's just kind of ended up being like, yeah, it's just a brown ale, like, and so it doesn't seem to be all that big of a deal. And when you talk to people about their IPAs, they're just like very specific about what it should be and how it should look and how it should taste. And I think brown ale should get that kind of attention too. So I think that's the next step.
Amen to that.
Next week, as we said, we're going to kind of continue on the brown ale trail. We're going to be doing Hofbräu Dunkel. That's the one that just got added to the BJCP this year. We'll be doing that. That'll be episode 24. That one should be pretty darn easy to find. I know out here, I know we can even get them in grocery stores sometimes. So hopefully that's easy. But also, if you've got a local brewery that's doing Dunkel, I mean, that's just for us. That's definitely another beer that you should just be supporting them anyway. You should get Hofbräu and that beer,
Yeah,
and
make
just
make room for two 6 packs. Get the
yep,
Hofbräu to have with us, and then support your local Dunkel hashtag.
yep, exactly, yep. So yeah, or for all of those out there who are screaming, because I know there's a contingency of people who I know want us to say this next week. We will be doing session Doppelbock for for the Drink More Doppelbock movement. This
Yep.
is session
Hashtag.
Doppelbock 5%.
Yep. Hashtag Drink More Doppelbock is going viral. It's been going well. And if you really think about it, Dunkel's just session Doppelbock. So
It really is, and we love that. So, cheers, everybody! Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks to all those who have. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you next time. Cheers, everybody!
cheers, friends.